This is the Holy Gospel according to Mark.
Glory to you, O Lord.
As Jesus came out of the temple, one of his disciples said to him, "Look, teacher, what large stones and what large buildings." Then Jesus asked him, "Do you see these great buildings? Not one stone will be left here upon another. All will be thrown down." When he was sitting on the Mount of Olives opposite the temple, Peter, James, John, and Andrew asked him privately, "Tell us, when will these things be? And what will be the sign that all these things are about to be accomplished?" Then Jesus began to say to them, "Beware that no one leads you astray. Many will come in my name and say, 'I am he,' and they will lead many astray. When you hear of wars and rumors of wars, do not be alarmed. This must take place, but the end is still to come. For nation will rise against nation, and kingdom against kingdom. There will be earthquakes in various places. There will be famines. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, O Christ.
The country is so divided. People don't know how to get along anymore. There is a lack of civility. I've never seen it this bad. It's going to get worse. Have you heard some of those sorts of things said recently? Have you even said some of them yourself? I normally don't like to play the pessimism game, but today I'm going to entertain the thought that things are really getting that bad. Because I think the gospel reading has something to say about these things. But before we address the reality of what actually is the case, let's admit that there are few things that skew our perception of reality when it comes to politics and civic life and the news. The first is the news itself, which so often is reports about what went wrong. This is more than just the age-old adage, if it bleeds, it leads. It's more basic than that. It's that what is considered newsworthy is often the bad news, right? Violence, protests, disagreements, political fights. That's the news. I'm not sure if those are the most newsworthy things, but the fact that we hear and read about them so much gives us a slanted view of reality. The second thing to remember is that news thrives on division. It's unfortunate, but it's just the case that people like conflict. A video clip of two people politely discussing an issue doesn't get as many clicks as a video of your favorite politician or TV personality destroying their opponent. And as a result, we hear about the disagreements a lot because disagreement sells. And third, we have been led to believe that political news is pretty much the most important thing happening. The 24-hour news networks spend the majority of their time talking about political news, even though the rest of us spend most of our life thinking of everything else. I read the news headlines on my phone every morning, and it's story after story about the president, the Congress, the elections, and all the controversies and high-emotion issues surrounding all these. Now, elections and politicians are important. I'm not suggesting they're not. It's just, well, I need to remind myself there are other things going on. I hope you will take those little observations for what they're worth. Even as we admit, in some ways, we are living in a uniquely cruel and divisive time. And so what do you think our response as Christian people should be? In the face of division, a lack of civility, however bad things are, what do you think our call as people of God is? In a way, that's what the gospel reading is getting at. Sort of. The setting of the scripture reading is a little different. It wasn't civil and political stress that the faithful then were dealing with. It was threats of persecution and fear about the end of time. But the way Christian people are encouraged to live is still relevant. And here's how Mark 13 suggests that we should live: carefully and hopefully. Say that with me. Carefully and hopefully. Beware, Jesus says. With startling images, Jesus told his disciples things about the end of time. Disasters, wars and rumors of wars, people trying to lead others astray. Jesus warns about these signs and tells his followers to be alert and watchful. And why does Jesus say these things? So those who follow him will live carefully. This is but the beginning of the birth pangs, Jesus says. Jesus has a sense about what the future how the future will go, and it includes tough times for the world and for his disciples too. But also, it includes the knowledge, the promise that God is in control. And why does Jesus say these things? So that those who follow him will live hopefully. That was the message of Jesus then, and it surely is a message from Jesus to us now. Disasters, wars and rumors of war, people leading us astray, tough times for us and for the world, but the promise that God is in control. Well, that's where we find ourselves, isn't it? And so to us, isn't Jesus saying, live carefully and hopefully? What would that be like, do you think? What does that look like in our lives, to live carefully and hopefully? Could we live more carefully, being careful to be more civil, more understanding, more tolerant of others? Could we care for people by listening to them and thinking the best of them? Can we show care in such a way that the love of Jesus shines through us? And could we live more hopefully, not giving in to the negativity that comes to us so easily, not accepting that bad news is the most important news of all? Could we be hopeful by living the values of God's kingdom and trusting that these are more powerful than what is working against it? We say the country is so divided. People don't know how to get along anymore. There is a lack of civility. I've never seen it this bad. It may get worse. What can we do? We can demonstrate to all who are willing to see that there is a different vision, a different way of life than the one we see in the latest news, the latest posts, the latest scandals, the latest strife. It's the way of life centered in Jesus and his call to care and hope. This week, some of the news has been about votes, counting votes, not counting votes, conceding elections, not conceding elections. And that reminds me of a story a friend of mine recently told me about a poor decision his 9-year-old daughter made at their church. Each year at Halloween, the church holds a friendly pumpkin carving contest. It's a fellowship event where people gather in the fellowship hall and they carve their pumpkins. Then each person gets to vote for their 3 favorite pumpkins, and whoever gets the most votes is declared best pumpkin of the year. It's all in good fun. But this year, my friend's daughter cheated by voting for her own pumpkin 18 times. And she won. When her parents confronted her about it, she lied. Maybe I should also mention she's the pastor's kid. Well, later they discussed it with her more, and she fessed up. Being the good parents they are, and as a way to make up for what she'd done, they made her write a card to the guy whose pumpkin clearly should have won, apologizing and conceding that he was the rightful winner. And then a few days later, that same boy wrote her a note back. My friend shared a copy of that note with me. No names, but this is what his note back said. Thank you for the kind letter you wrote me. I know it takes lots of courage to do that, and I am proud of you. I'm sorry your pumpkin never receives votes, but don't give up. Also remember that it is about having fun together as a church family. That is a win for all of us. Thank you again for your letter, and I will see you Sunday at church. Peace. You see? A different vision, a different way of life, centered in care and hope. It seems like a small thing, conceding a victory in the pumpkin carving contest, responding to your rival carver with charity. It's not end of the world kind of stuff. But isn't it change the world kind of stuff? And that note, that grace, that way of listening and of forgiving, our world needs more of that. Oh Lord, let us hear more of that kind of news.